Hey guys, this is Andrea. So, guys, this is my media channel. And, guys, this is one that I'm going to be focusing on what is shamelessly my special interest, and that is the Shadowhunters books and series. I wouldn't describe myself as a stan, but it is a special interest of mine. And, guys, I see you guys love when I'm talking about Magnus. Um, Guys, for those of you who haven't seen the books or the TV series or the movies, so this content is owned and shout out to Cassandra Clare. So it was a book series, and there is several book series. So there is the Infernal Devices, there is the Mortal Instruments, and then there is the Last Hours in the book series. Um, and it was a movie, but because there is so much content in the books, the movie did flop as well. And it was at the height of Harry Potter fever, I do have to say, as well as the Mortal Engines. So it was at the height of YA marketing. Comic Cons were becoming a bit more mainstream instead of just for those who were in the fandoms as well. So Comic Con, Supernova, things like that as well. So, and then we do have the TV series on Netflix as well. It is on the back catalogue of Netflix. And there is now a podcast being done by Dom Sherwood and Catherine McNamara called Return to the Shadows. I did, because it was very, very cold yesterday, I did my housework with a support worker and some crafting while binge listening to these guys. And I will say a shout out to the podcast. They're having a lot of guests on. Um, a lot of times the podcast will only do the actors and a couple of the head cast and crew, where these guys are really essentially taking back the curtain and, as they say, returning to the shadows. So that is returning to the world that they inhabited and talking about hair, makeup, costuming, and how that set the tone for the day. And they were filming in Toronto, and that would have been a challenge because, and they do talk about that as well. And so, guys, I just wanted to clear that one up because some of you guys were saying in my DMs that you guys didn't know where the source material came from. So it is the young adult books. And I'm finding rereading them as an adult, it is very much an escape as well. Um, you do have some cringy moments, but you're realizing that in the books, these are teens. In the shows, they are adults. And that's what I wanted to focus on today is the book to screen adaptation of the character Magnus Bane. So in the movie, Magnus Bane was played by Jeffrey Gayo, and he was a bit more truer to the books because Magnus is quite an interesting character. So for those who don't know the world, I will link the video, the introduction to the world. Magnus is a warlock, and the warlock is immortal in this world. And so they have a very different view on things. So obviously, being immortal, they don't have a sense of mortality, a sense of time running out. They essentially have all the time in the world. If they want to change career, they will. Um, we do also see in the show, in the alternative universe, that Magnus is still a warlock, but he has let his magic go dormant because the world is quite peaceful. They don't actually need the Shadowhunters. The Shadowhunters have died out. There is no downworlders, so that is creatures that have got mundane blood, which is human blood, but also have a soul. And so they are counted amongst denizens of heaven as well. But in the show, which is the content that I've seen mostly, is, and I've talked about this at length, is that they had to essentially age up the characters because in the movie, when it did flop, when the characters were more reflective of their ages, we did see it flop. But then when Netflix took it on, they aged up the characters to make it essentially more believable for the people who haven't read the source material. One relationship, and there will be spoilers in this as well if you haven't watched it, is Magnus and Alec. And so it would have been questionable in the books. We see Magnus essentially as a parental figure. Magnus is able to solve a lot of the issues. There's actually a line in one of the books that Magnus is saying that he feels like he's running a home for wayward Shadowhunters. That's the line, I just couldn't think of it. Is welcome to St. Magnus's home for wayward Shadowhunters. Wipe your boots on the way in. This is reflected in a TV moment where Jace has been manipulated by Valentine, who is the villain in the first and second season, to believe that he is evil. And he's not welcome at the Institute, and he ends up asking Magnus where he can crash. Jace, is actually quite cocky in the books. We do see that Alec struggles with what could be, in the books, could be considered social anxiety. And then we also do see that Magnus and Alec dating. And this is where we do see media standards come in, and this is what forced them to age up the characters, is the media standards. So it would have been quite unacceptable to have a 800-year-old warlock dating a 16-year-old boy. We can understand the message that that sends, and even in my books, that is unacceptable. Physically dating. However, we do have to realize that Magnus is immortal, and so therefore, yes, that's when age really does become a number. And you see him having a lot more maturity than some of the younger Shadowhunters, because he has seen cultures essentially rise and fall. He's seen the rise of Valentine. He saw the rise of the Circle, which was the fanatic breakaway group within the Shadowhunters. He saw the formation of the Clave. He was very much a driving force in the formation of the Accords. The Accords is essentially the world's parallel to the UN Declaration of Human Rights. It gave downworlders their human rights, the right not to be bothered, and the right not to be hunted for sport by the Shadowhunters. So you can see a lot of parallels there to a lot of cultures that were colonialized, and I will do those parallels there as well. I do, because it is my lens, because it is my world. I do see a lot of links to disability and disability culture, not fitting in the Shadowhunters world, not fitting in the Downworlders world. Where do you fit in? Having that fear of missing out, because the warlocks can lose their magic, or their magic can go dormant. They don't lose their gift of their sight, but they can get sick. That is discussed in the books and in the TV show in different ways as well. But coming back to Magnus, I know I've gone on a massive tangent, but going back to Magnus, he seems to have very much a hold on things as well. And even Dom and Kat have mentioned that the young Shadowhunters don't seem to have a lot of common sense. That if it was a military organisation, they would be on I-Corps duty, they would be on latrine duty, that it makes sense for them to be locked down and not able to leave the Institute, which is where the Shadowhunters live. In the books, the Shadowhunters is run by the Lightwood family, and that is a punishment. That does come out later in the show, but they do need to take Shadowhunters in need. We do see that other Shadowhunters, particularly in the books, are able to set up units, and they do have an income coming in from the clave as well. And we do see that their income is from tithing from the 5 major religions. So Dom, that one, in return for hashtag poor Raj. So this is something that I want to touch on that Dom Sherwood touched on in the Return to the Shadows podcast, is that they have a Shadowhunter that is very much following the orders of the clave, of the director of the Institute, who seems to get the wrong end of the stick. He seems his forced chokehold by Magnus when Marias, no, not Marias, Clary's mum, Jocelyn. So Jocelyn, sorry about that, guys. When Jocelyn is manipulating people, so we do see that Jocelyn does manipulate people in this world, that she was able to protect Clary for until she was 16 in the books, 18 in the show. And Clary does discover that she's a Shadowhunter. In the books, we do discover that Magnus has helped a whole line of Shadowhunters escape this world, because it is essentially a very brutal world. And then we also do see that Magnus has closed his heart off. He becomes quite hedonistic. And we do see that as Alex and his relationship progresses, he does become more and more sensible. We don't see it in the show, but we do see it in the books, that the way they were able to connect with Magnus is through a party, and he does admit that he must have been drunk at the time. He does sober up his drinking, but we do also see addiction discussed in quite a mature level in the show. And obviously in the show, they couldn't have someone drunk all the time, and so they do tune that back a bit. In the books, it can be a bit more overt, because that's how the warlocks essentially cope with being immortal and fueling their magic as well. We do see that Show Magnus does have his head screwed on a lot more as well. Because in the books he does become the Shadowhunter's pet warlock through Alec, but in the show he does stand up for himself a lot more. And so, guys, going back to Raj is one of those stickler for the rules type of thing, and we do have to have some compassion for him, that he gets all the shitty jobs. So guarding Magnus and Alec. And yes, his attitude could be better, and that's probably why he gets the shitty jobs. But guys, drop it in the comments below. What did you guys think of the TV adaptation? Did you watch it? Did you enjoy it? Is it on your back catalogue? What do you think about it as well? Do you think there's going to be an Infernal Devices reboot? I've put my piece into that in negotiation doesn't mean it's being green lighted as well, as Netflix is losing a lot of money at the moment. It might also be up and running on another streaming service. We don't know until we see it advertised online as well. I am not going to comment further until I see it come out on Netflix or BBC or one of the other streaming services as well. And we do have to admit that it has been essentially 5 years since they've wrapped. The actors have moved on, they have matured, the sets would have been sold off, and so it might not be physically and financially practical to do a reboot. It might, and that is why the fandom is still so strong as well. But we can always hope. We do see that there's been reboots of Star Trek, The Next Generation as well. Guys, if you can, please, if you're enjoying the content, like, share, subscribe. Guys, I also, over on my main channel, do discuss disability and media from an Australian perspective if you wanted to go and follow me over there as well. And I do also have a subscriber only newsletter where I talk about what's coming, what's happening in my life, what's happening behind the scenes. Sometimes I will put my outtakes in as well. Generally talk about my life as a person with a disability as well. So guys, thank you for listening and watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.